Hello and aloha, and welcome aboard to History 241, Civilizations of Asia Part 1, Session 12. Today we'll be talking about Hinduism. My name is Abdul Karim Khan. I teach here at Leeward Community College, and please note down my phone number and the email address on the WebCT course outline. That's very important. Also, please go to WebCT or the course outline or the course schedule or syllabus, whatever you call it. Please go and check out the readings, the assigned readings, as well as some of these assignments that might be coming up, in terms of the test or the, the writings or the essays or whatever they are, the assignments. So please check them regularly and do contact me, whenever you want to, or whenever you need me, but note down my recent phone number on your course outline, and please use that and call me at that particular number. Today we would be going into Hinduism, Buddhism. I'm sorry, we did Hinduism before, and today we will be going into Buddhism, another major religion of India, and for that reason also of Asia. So let's see first what we did last time, a sort of a review of the lecture that we did last time. We talked about the origins of Hinduism as a major religion, or the number one popular religion in India, and how it spread to different parts of India and outside India. We also talked about the Hindu trinity of gods, or the three major gods or deities in Hinduism, and the function of each one of them and how they are perceived, by the followers of Hinduism. We also talked about the holy books of Hinduism, especially the Vedas, and how they are treated in Hinduism and which one is used for what purpose. So we talked about the holy books of Hinduism, the Vedas. We also talked about the beliefs and the practices of Hinduism, what it takes to become a Hindu or to be a Hindu, and in terms of belief and practices. And I also said that to be a Hindu, you have to be a born Hindu. You have to be born in Hindu family, so that your caste system would be determined through that way. So speaking of the caste system, we talked about the social system organized under Hinduism and how it worked. Even though caste system, as I said, was in 1947 when India became free India, it was abolished. Although legally, constitutionally, the caste system stands abolished, but still practically it is used and practiced in India, especially in rural India. And then we also talked about the objectives or the debts or the practices of Hinduism. Now, as I said, Hinduism, a major religion in India, or rather the major religion of India. Keep in mind, this religion influenced almost every human being in India and every religion. So that's why the religions that other religions like Buddhism, or even later on Islam, that we would talk about down the road after Buddhism, the next section after Buddhism would be on Islam. These religions were also, or the followers of the religion, they were also in one way or another influenced by the overall culture of Hinduism. They did not have to take the theology of Hinduism. They did not have to believe in the gods or the deity of Hinduism, but still, as I said in the previous lecture, Hinduism is not just only a religion. It is also a culture. It's also a social system. And so that culture and that social system, the literature, also influenced these other rising religions in India. So that's we would see today about Buddhism, the second religion in India. Let's see what is there for us in Buddhism today, sort of introduction. Today we would talk about the origins of Buddhism, how it started, and of course how it spread to what places it went. The early life of Buddha, the founding father of Buddhism, who he was and in terms of what he did. Also, a little bit of Jainism, and the reason I'm bringing here Jainism is that Buddhism, Buddha himself was influenced by Jainism or Jain-like attitude and Jain-like practices. So that's why we would talk about Jainism, another religion of India. Buddha's teachings, of course, we would focus on that and how through the teachings of the Buddha, a person gets, salvation. And also keep in mind that for the teachings of Buddha, one does not have to be a Buddhist person. The holy books of Buddhism, we would also talk about those, the sacred books of Buddhism, and how they stand in the overall, structure of Buddhism. And then we would talk about the 4 major Buddhist councils, how they were, created, and what was the need for these councils to be convened, and what was the role of these councils in the development or in the further making of Buddhism or in the spread of Buddhism. Also, the major Buddhist sects, how these councils or the teaching of Buddha or the treatment of the holy books, and some of the doctrines, how they created these different sectarian groups, at least 2 major groups that today we would talk about. So keep that in mind, that the sectarianism or the splitting up of a religion into different groups. And these different groups, one believes in one type of a theology and practices another type of, ritual. This is not just confined or unique to Buddhism. Almost every major religion went through it. So that's why no religion stays the same for all these centuries. Somewhere down the road, somebody brings another thought into it. And that's how you see, sectarianism in almost every major religion, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, even in Jainism, which is a limited, number of followers, Jainism, and still, it's a little bit divided. You would wish that it would stay united because it's a small, the number of followers is very small, so it would be one type of a Jainism, but it does, get into other fields. So let's start with Buddhism, the rise of Buddhism and the origins of Buddhism. Siddharatha, Gautama, that later on would become Buddha, that was the person who started it. His personal name, first name was Siddharatha. Gautama was his family name, and Buddha, that's how he became later on known, and would see what it means. So keep in mind, right now he's just Siddhartha Gautama. And he was born, close to about, say, 600 years, before Christ. For that makes it a very ancient, very old religion. Not as old as Hinduism. Hinduism was by this time, by the rise of Gautama or by the rise of Buddha, that he would later on become. Hinduism was about, if not more, at least 1,000 years old. So that's why Hinduism, a religion, very old religion, very ancient, having ancient roots. So that is the reason Hinduism, influenced almost everybody and everything in India. So was Buddha. Basically, Buddha or Gautama or Siddhartha, whatever name you want to use right now, for now, he was a Hindu person. And so from that Hinduism, he moved into something else that later on, centuries later, would be known, among the Indian as Buddhmat. That is Buddhism. It's called Buddhmat in India, Buddhism. So let's see further. Siddhartha Gautama, he was the son of Shadudana Gautama and Mahamaya, his mother. His father, Shadudana Gautama, and his mother, Mahamaya. They were Shadudana, in fact, he was the ruler. of a place in the south of Nepal, and this family belonged to the Sakya ruling clan, and their caste, because they were Hindus, the family of Gautama or the family of Buddha, since they were Hindus, they were Kshatriya caste. They had a Kshatriya caste. Kshatriya, as you might remember from your Hinduism lecture, in the caste system, this is the caste which does what? It does fighting. It's a warrior caste, and for that reason, wherever the Kshatriya are in power, there they establish their rule. So there, this Sakya family, which belonged to the Kshatriya caste, established their rule in about the border of modern-day Nepal and India. In those days, I mean, there were no borders. There wasn't any Nepal or any other place. So this was still considered to be part of Greater India, and lived close to, if you remember, that greatest kingdom that lived in the northeastern part of India and almost brought everybody under its control, Magadha. If you remember the Magadha kingdom, how powerful, great it was, because it was in the Ganges, basin, and it controlled a lot of place, especially most of northeastern India. So this Sakya family that ruled, the Kshatriya caste that ruled there in the north of India and south of Nepal, that's where Buddha, or the future Buddha, was born. His mother, in fact, died soon after his birth, or some people believe that she died right in the childbirth. Whatever the timing of her death, but she did die because of his birth. Some people believe she was a very beautiful woman, and in the literature of Buddhism, there's a lot of stuff written about her personal beauty, her character, what a wonderful person she was. Let's see further. Buddha was named as Siddharatha, which literally means a person who had achieved all his goals of life right at birth. Now think about it. He's just born, and he's given this name, Siddhartha, which means that a person who has already achieved all the goals of his life. So he's already an accomplished person. So for life is concerned, soon after birth, he is considered to be an accomplished person. Now, the reason he was considered this very accomplished person, a person who has achieved the goal of his life, after his birth, what happened was his father, who was the ruler, of his kingdom, although this was not really a great kingdom like Magadha, it was just a border kingdom up, there in the south of Nepal and northern India. So this ruler, the new father of Siddhartha, he called for a soothsayer that would predict the future, of this boy, just by looking at him. And staying with him, he could tell, who he would become later on in life, that sort of thing. So there comes the soothsayer, and he tells his father, this boy, Siddhartha, he would be one of the two persons. Either he would be a great ruler, or he would be a great holy person. And these were, of course, the greatest professions, the two greatest professions of those times. And the one that everybody, could not achieve, of course, difficult to become the king or the holy man. So his father was told by this soothsayer that, it looks like your son is going to be one of the two, either a great ruler or a great holy man. Holy man, sacred person, like a prophet, so to speak. And so his father, of course, wished his son to become the first. That is a great ruler rather than a great holy man. So he provided, the king, he provided for his son almost everything right there in the palace, because the idea was that he should not be allowed to get out of palace and see the real life, so that his mind would not be disturbed by the reality of the outside life, and he would not turn to religion or philosophy or mysticism, which most of the time they come under very intense circumstances or difficult circumstances that a person goes through in life. So to keep him always good and happy and always in the company of the rulers and the politicians and the royal palace and the government and the administration, so that's why the king provided for him a great palace where he would live away from every trouble, so that he could one day become a ruler and not a holy man. Let's see what would happen. He got him married in very early age, got him married with a local princess, Yashodhara. And some people believe and say that this lady Yashodhara, she was his first cousin. Whether she was or not, but you should know that first cousin marriages are very common in that part of the world, not only in South Asia, but also in Southeast Asia, as well as in the Middle East, and particularly also in Central Asia. So first cousin marriages are very common. Don't jump on that. So he got married to Yashodhara, a local princess, and had a son by the name Rahula. Let's see next. He lived in this family life in the palace, until the age of 29. And while his father was still, around, he's a young man or, a rising person, of 29, he's learning the skills of administration, he's learning, warfare, and at least how to rule the kingdom that his father is soon just about to give him, and he's going to inherit from his father. So he's becoming, sort of accomplished person in the administration. But at the age of 29, he begged his father to let him go out of the palace and let him see at least some place, outside the palace, because by this, age 29, he became like a little bit tired of the great thing that he was seeing, every day and every night. So he wanted to go out of the palace. And his father said, okay, I'm going to let you go out. So he arranged for his going out in a way that he would not come across any untoward incident or any bad thing. So he created a perfect situation for him to go. And so Siddharatha, he went out of the palace in the company of a trusted advisor that he would stay with him for long times. So he went out on a horse, and so, but he went a little bit further, beyond the point that he was supposed to not to go, but he went, anyway. And so his attendant, reminded him that, you should not be going in those other places. He said, well, let's go, find out. And so he went there, and let's see what happened. We're talking of the early, life of Buddha. So there he saw what's called the 4 passing sights. He saw, number one, in the passing, he sighted an old man, which he had never seen. So he was very much puzzled looking at this person dragging himself because of his old age and weak as he was. So he asked his attendant, his advisor, who is this person? What is this? And he said, well, this is an old man. Old age does this thing to you. So as we grow, we become old. And, Siddhartha did not know this. Next stop, he sees a sick person, an ill person. And he said, what is this? This person even cannot move. What's wrong with him? And he said, he's diseased. He's a sick person. Yeah, he's sick. He's ill. And so this is also, so he's been asking this question, is this really going to happen to everyone, to me too? And, his advisor told him, yes, it's a, part of life. It happens. But he did not know, thanks to his father, courtesy of his father, that kept him in the palace. Then further on he saw a dead person, and that horrified him, seeing death. And he asked, and he was told, this is what happens when a person, dies. And that really shocked him. And then he sees this ascetic person or sadhu person or what's called the sannyasi, in India, a holy man who just roams around, doing his thing, meditation or whatever he's doing, chanting, and never cares for anything else, and very carefree life, free like a bird. He's cruising around. And so Siddhartha saw him too, and asked, who is this guy? And he was told that this is a holy man. He is not afraid of any sickness, old age, or death, or whatever in the world. And so he does not have to worry about all these things, although all of them would come to him. He would grow old, he would, become sick before his death, and eventually he would die. So, but he doesn't care, but this was a big difference between the ascetic, this holy person, and Siddhartha. A big difference because Siddhartha was shaken by the sights of these four people, different people. So he started to wonder. He started to ponder, to thinking about life itself, and very much shaken when he came back. He had been thinking a lot about this. Let's see further. He wanted to find solutions to all these human problems, old age, sickness, death, and all that goes with it, the pain and the suffering that he saw in these people. So he wanted to, solve these problems and find solution for these human problems. Now, in the age that he was living, there were basically two ways to, get around these problems. Number one was, just like everybody else, and both were in fact Hindu solutions. Number one was ignore the reality that surrounds you. Just live your life. So ignore reality by living. Don't worry too much about these things. Live perfectly or as fully as you can. Don't bother about these things. That was one. They would come to you anyway, no matter what you do. They would come to you, and so ignore the reality just by living your own life, and don't bother about these things just everybody was doing. Number two was that you can control the reality by renunciation. You can control old age, sickness, and even death, as some people claimed, by renunciation. And how you do that? Well, remember the fourth person, the holy man that Siddhartha watched and was very much impressed with his being, not bothered by these three sights, or how free he was from all these things. That was, sort of in the mind of Siddhartha. And this was also, as I said, a Hindu culture in which there were a lot of holy men who had ignored every shackle or chain of the caste system. They were beyond Hinduism. They were beyond the caste system. So this was a way to deal with the pain, with the suffering, with the reality of life, to quit everything, every aspect of material life, and become, a sadhu or sannyasi, and renounce all life, or the material aspect of life. Even your physical body, renounce it. And so most of these people, what they were looking for, if they killed themselves just by starving to death, that was fine with them, and that's how people did, and that's how, even Siddhartha would try. So let's see how he was going to find the solution for all these problems. Still, we are dealing with the Buddha's early life. Siddhartha, he also renounced life. He quit life. He left his family, beautiful wife, child, and the life of a palace, of a prince. And he went in search of these great teachers that there were in India, especially East India, northeastern India. And he met them and he talked to them. He learned a lot from them, but each teacher told him that he knew more than, as a student, he knew more than that the teacher did. So that's what, his excellence was, that he excelled every great teacher that he met. Then he also, as I said, he was very much under the Hindu influences and ascetic life. So he went and, into the extreme ascetic life of renunciation. He exhausted whatever was there to, get into this extreme asceticism. If there was fasting, he would do it. If there was meditation for, days and nights, he would do it. If there was other like yoga, the breathing or the body posture, whatever was there for a person to become a perfect yogi or a perfect holy person or a perfect sannyasi or sadhu, Siddhartha did all of them. But he was coming to, reaching the short end of this extreme asceticism, although he was just about, to collapse, and he could not talk, he could not walk. He just, frozen in time like that and sitting and could not do anything else, because that was the ritual. You fast till death, and that was, what he was doing basically. So he came to realize that that was not really a good solution. And so he was moving from the palace life that he was enjoying to the life of a starving sadhu, to the life of another type of a person that we would see now. He, as I said, he nearly starved himself to death. And this was like a Jain-like asceticism, extremism of the Jain type, or for the Jain sadhus or sannyasis. So he quit this type of a asceticism or this type of a approach to solve the problem of the pain in life. So he quit that. Now let's see what is this Jain-like asceticism and who are the Jains and what is Jainism itself. Oh, there he is, Buddha, right here. Very bearded Buddha. I don't know if you have seen a bearded Buddha, but of course there he is sitting and very skinny. I have seen in my hometown, in Peshawar, his statues where you see nothing but only ribs right there, ribs and bones, and he's just like a skeleton, frozen, and sitting there, frozen in stone, of course, because of the statue, the sculpture. He looks very beautiful, of course, it doesn't scare you, but still, he's nothing but ribs and bones. But unfortunately, because of the these copyright problems, I cannot show you that particular statue of Buddha. But here too, he seems to be very skinny and starving person. So he said no to all this extremism, and especially that of Jainism. Now, speaking of Jainism, some people believe that Siddhartha had met personally the person who founded the religion or the philosophy that later on would become as Jainism. So let's see what was there and what was it that impressed so much, Buddha or Siddhartha to take Jainism. Jainism, it was founded by a person, later on he would become known, but originally he was known as Vardhamana. And 599 BC, that's almost like, 600 years before Christ. And as I said, some people believe that he was contemporary and even met, Siddhartha. So Vardhamana, he, like Buddha or Siddhartha, also came from this warrior Kshatriya caste. And his family also had ties to the royal family of Magadha. So this is almost the same place that Buddha and Vardhamana were rising, or Siddhartha and Vardhamana were rising from this area. Just like Siddhartha, at the age of 30, Vardhamana also turned to asceticism for answers, to see how he could solve his problems or the problems of the world or the people that surrounded him. And so at 30, he also quit, life, material life and family, and went into asceticism and took the life of, resorted to the life of a sadhu or sannyasi. Now, by extreme meditation for long time, this is what the belief is, that Vardhamana got jnana or enlightenment. He became awakened, or he got this knowledge, and for that reason he is called Mahavira, or great hero. Also Vardhamana, and now we can call him Mahavira, and he is much more known after that title Mahavira rather than by his first name, or real name Vardhamana. So he turned against Brahmanism, and also he ignored the holy books of Hinduism, and especially the caste system. So there he was, in a way, a lot of scholars, they tell us that he was reforming Hinduism, and he was taking Hinduism out of, the ancient books that emphasized, the caste system, or emphasized war and warfare, and the great, power of the Brahmins. So he was really not doing anything else. What he was doing was he was not creating another religion. He was reforming the already existing religion of Hinduism. So Mahavira, as well as Buddha, Siddharatha, who were contemporary, as I said, they both wanted to reform Hinduism. That is one way, but of course their followers, they say no. They were already, up to create another religion and show people another way to deal with their problems. This would be something like, you would see a lot of even Christian scholars that would tell you that Jesus, he lived in a Jewish culture. He was the product of a Jewish culture, just like Buddha and Mahavira were the product of their Hindu culture and Hindu religion, and Hindu, in India. Similarly, Jesus was also the product of a Jewish culture in Palestine, Roman Palestine. And so what he wanted was to reform Judaism rather than to create a new religion, which later on became anyway, known after him as Christianity. So just like the relationship that Christ had with Judaism and the Jewish culture and the Torah, the holy book, of the Jews, similarly, these two great persons, Mahavira and Buddhism, had that relation with Hinduism. And so they discarded a lot of stuff from the Hinduism, although so for asceticism and some of the moral features of Hinduism are concerned, they did take those moral aspects of Hinduism, although they did not go for the rituals of Hinduism. Both Buddha and Mahavira, they were against Brahmanism. That is the rule of the priestly class, in which you really cannot get salvation without the help of the priest or the church for that reason, So they were very much against that. Another thing that they discarded in Hinduism was the caste system. They did not believe in the caste system. Both Mahavira and Buddhism, they believe that everybody is born free. Everybody is equal of another person. And so that's why they were against the caste system, and whoever wanted to do whatever, that was their choice. So for taking a profession is concerned. So most people believe, especially in Buddhist and Jain, tradition, that was very good on part of Mahavira and Buddhism, that they rejected the caste system and particularly the Brahmanism of the Hindu religion. Let's see further. However, Mahavira did keep the beautiful temple and the structure of the temples and the sculpture of the temples of Hinduism for his religion. Now, with Jainism, how to get escape from Samsara. Remember Samsara from Hinduism? Samsara was that cycle of life and death and rebirth and, re-death that a person went through. and the soul hated it and wanted to break out of this cycle and get into, you get united with Atman or Brahma to get moksha, to get that salvation. That's samsara. Now Jainism, Jina, or for that reason Mahavira wanted how to escape from that samsara. So number one, he believed that we should leave all earthly passions, get out of this material life. Meditate intensively. That would help you calm down, and think positive. Also acquire the right knowledge. That was also very important. First, number one, quit, this passionate urge or desire for life. Meditate, ponder over your problems or life, and get the right type of a knowledge. And also in Jainism, you have these 5 vows, promises that a Jain person is supposed to make. And that is a promise of poverty. Poverty is always looked upon as a good thing, not as a curse, as some people do. So the 5 vows of poverty, chastity, honesty, truth, and these are, something that, these are things that every religion, teaches to their followers, and particularly in Jainism, ahimsa, that we'll talk about in a minute. So keep in mind, Jainism also emphasizes, like in Christianity or other religions, it also emphasizes poverty, chastity, honesty, and truth. And compared to almost any other religion, Jainism emphasizes, and some people believe to the extreme, ahimsa, that is non-violence. Of course, some cultures or some religion, they talk about war and warfare and even justify warfare. Other religions, like in Christianity, we are taught, turning off the other cheek. If somebody does bad thing to you, you in return don't do bad. In return, do good. And even you should not be hating your own enemy. And that enemy is out to get you, but still you have to be peaceful even, with your enemies. So that type of a, non-violence, or that type of a peaceful coexistence between neighbors and people, we get from Christianity also. But here, when it comes to Jainism, this non-violence is of a different type, and that's why some people call it, it goes a little bit too far. Let's see ahimsa of Jainism. Ahimsa literally meaning non-injury. You do not injure anything or anybody, in which you respect for all beings, not only human beings, but animals, birds, fish. And from here you can guess that Jains, those who really follow their religion, they are strictly vegetarian. And so that's why it becomes sort of an extreme non-violence, or this non-violence becomes extreme when you see these masked or veiled, sweeping and straining and starving Jain monks. And still you see them, especially in Western India, when you go there, places like Gujarat, that is the state of, Mahatma Gandhi. If you go to Western India, there you see, these Jain monks, some of them having mask or something, to cover their mouth and nostril. And why do they do that? The reason is they do not want any bug or any mosquito or any fly to get into their nostril or mouth or get killed, because they have a lot of them, there, or any other place. They sweep when they walk. They sweep the ground in front of them, so that they may not step on a creature. When they drink water, they strain water, so that something would not get into their water and they would not drink whatever that thing may be. So for that reason, you would see some, the Jain monks, very skinny, and they would hardly eat. And they would eat, just to save themselves maybe from death or falling down. They would eat, but they would not prepare their own food. Other people would prepare the food for them. So it's not really begging, but it's good for the followers of Jainism to feed, their wandering monks among them, feed them. But the Jain monks would not eat too much. You won't see a fat Jain monk, like me, and it will be all very skinny. Okay, because I eat a lot. That's the reason. That's the problem. So you see them, as I said, you can meet them in Western India, even these days, modern times. So that's the sort of people believe this is extreme type of nonviolence. There, comes to my mind a story of a Jain monk who was passing by, a village, and there in the village, this woman, she was waiting for him so that she would give him a bowl of rice, the rice that she had prepared for him and cooked for him. And so when she offered this, rice, cooked rice, and he asked her, did you make this rice for me? And she said, of course, I made it for you, especially for you. And he said, no, I'm not going to eat this, because you cooked this rice, you killed this rice having me in mind. So I feel like guilty or the killer of this rice. So to that extreme, they would go and would not eat something cooked by or with fire. The reason that fire, it hurts, if you, it hurts, of course, but even the grain that you cook, on fire, or you bake on fire, even that grain gets hurt. To that extreme, they would take care, Another thing is, some Jains, they believe even these stones that you see, they have life and they have feelings, and don't bang them, against each other, or don't kick them because they have life and you can injure them. So that's why some people believe, it's a little bit too much, and that's why it's called extreme nonviolence, but to them it's not extremism. All right. There's another sort of a problem, with some people when they go to extreme, and that is some monks, Jain monks, they have this question, whether they should clothe themselves or not to clothe. So to clothe or not to clothe, that's the question with some of them. So you should not be surprised, to see someone just completely, you know what I mean, completely naked. And that's, they don't want these clothes, they want to be out of every, material life. That is the reason most of the economy is a non-agricultural economy, in which you don't grow anything, you do not reap anything, you do not injure any crop. Think about it. So that's why it's a non-agricultural economy. Well, thank goodness there is another type of economy, and that is business economy. So most of the Jain people, and that's, some people call it Jain capitalism, when Jain, followers, those who strictly, follow Jainism, they would go into business. They would go into trade. They would rather like to hawk, items from one place to another place, and, live like that, or, become doctors or engineers or attorneys, or for that reason, teachers, the best profession there is, they become teachers. And that's how they live their life, in which they do not have to cut anything or anybody, or they don't have to kill any bug or anything, so they do not engage in agricultural activity. Well, I think one can afford it because there are so many people that they can do that, but not everybody can do business or trade, which requires a lot of mathematics and accounting and all that, and that's how the Jain people, they get into business or trade or, finance, or as some people just call it, Jain capitalism. I have some friends, and they're very good, successful businessmen, and because they don't want to get into any other business. And most of them, the vast majority of them, those especially who really follow Jainism, they would be vegetarian. They would not eat any beef or any chicken or any even egg or anything else. Okay, let's see further on. Now, Buddha was not made for this type of, he believed not this type of asceticism or extremism. He went for the middle path of moderation. Neither the self-mortification of the Jain and other sannyasis and sadhus, nor the self-indulgence life that he was living in the palace. So in between the two of a prince and an extreme sannyasi or a sadhu or a priest, he went for the middle life, the middle path, which was to do a lot of meditation, pondering over the problems, and that's what he started. Meditation under the people that some people call it Bodhi tree, people tree. And here is a picture of a people tree. Back home, I remember people trees, a lot of them, and very huge and big, and their leaves, big leaves. But this one, I don't know what happened to this one. So it's not that big, or the leaves are not that big. It's the people leaves are very thick. So Buddha would sit under a tree like this and meditate and ponder till he became Buddha, that is an enlightened person. So he started meditation, and Siddharatha, became Buddha. Buddha meaning that he received Bodhi, he received enlightenment, he received this great awakening at the age of 35. And then later on he would teach people, what he got, and how they can become also, equally good people like himself. So he got enlightenment, he got awakening, and that is called Bodhi. And it is from this word or term Bodhi that we get the term Buddha or Buddhism. Buddha is a person who has been enlightened, who has been awakened to the solution of the problems that people suffer, in life. So that's what it means, Bodhi and Buddha and Buddhism, awakening, enlightenment, and awareness of the problem in life. And let's see how that awareness works in Buddhism. That would get us to the teachings of Buddha. He taught Dharma or duty for 35 years. He preached a lot. And he also, when he was preaching, he would go to any caste. He did not discriminate, against any caste. He would go to anybody and teach them these great principles of life. He also created sanghas or communities or groups of Buddhist monks and nuns. Originally, I believe everybody could become part of the sangha. Sangha means just a community of the Buddhist people, but later on they would be just, monks and nuns, the groups of sanghas. He would not do, as I said, any discrimination, especially the caste discrimination, no caste discrimination. He would rather teach everybody. He did not have any religious discrimination against anyone. And the reason for that is, as we would see, with all great religions, that one does not have to be really particularly theologically belonging that religion to believe, or to practice the principles of that particular religion. So some religions, they're so good. They teach you just basic human philosophy or human morals that any religion would tell you. And some people, they do it through, the teaching of gods, like divine commandments, as we have, the 10 commandments in Torah. That is also, very common to Christianity as well as to Islam. Somewhere in Hinduism, as we saw, a lot of good teachings. Similarly in Jainism, and particularly in Buddhism, you have most of these wonderful teachings that if a person follows, so you don't have to Buddhism for some of these great things that Buddhism teaches us. Let's see further. Buddha taught these four great noble truths, and we would do it, step by step. Number one truth is that Jivan dukkha hai. Life is dukkha. Life is suffering, difficulty, life is pain. That one must realize and one must, believe in. Now, that suffering is caused by desire. That's another, truth that he teaches us, that it is desire that causes us all this suffering. We crave for too many things. We desire too many things, and that's why, we got ourselves into so many material things, and we brought all this suffering and pain upon us. We work too much, for too many things, and that's how we get involved into suffering. There in this picture, you see Buddha right here on the right side. He is teaching in what is called the Deer Park Sermon, one of the best and the first sermons that Buddha delivered and made him, a great teacher. Let's see further of the Four Noble Truths. The end of suffering is nirvana. But keep in mind, this nirvana is not exactly the same thing that is meant, in Hinduism by moksha. So there is a difference between the two: salvation, nirvana, and moksha. Nirvana of Buddhism and moksha of Hinduism both are translated as salvation or release. For him, nirvana was release from decay, disease, and death. One would become free from all these problems. Release from lust, release from anger, ignorance, and craving and desire for life. Once we get freedom from all these, problems, then we would get that salvation. And some people believe that salvation is right here on this earth. So in Buddhism, or for some people in Buddhism, nirvana is that blissful peace of mind and a spiritual freedom that people get when they get release or freedom from lust, anger, ignorance, craving. And think about it. When we get freedom from all these things, definitely, we can achieve that nirvana right here, right now. But it's not that easy as it is said. The other noble truth is the way to nirvana, is through the noble eightfold path, or some people call it the eightfold noble path, which deals with thought, language, and deeds of any person. So in the eightfold noble path, Buddha teaches us what to do, what to think, and how to think, what actions, what deeds should we be doing, what type of a language should we be using. So he, gives us all these detailed teachings in terms of controlling one's own mind, one's own tongue, language, and behavior. That's what, and look at all these great, eightfold path, which is to have the right view, something which belongs to the mind. Right view, right resolve, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So these, everything, when we get it right in thought, language, and deeds, definitely this would lead us, to a very peaceful life. Once a person is mentally, peaceful, peace in head and peace in heart, peace in the body, peace in hands, peace in the environment, definitely, you got right there, your own nirvana, or right, your own salvation right here in this world. Now, when we say nirvana or salvation in this world, Buddha was very careful not to get into theological problems, to the extent that he does not talk about any God. And that has led some people to believe that he did not believe in any God. Whether that was true or not, at least on his part, he did not want to get into these problems of theological problems, because he was dealing with real life right now and right here. So he wanted to take care of the life now, and not to worry about the life hereafter. So that some scholars believe that Buddhism, for that reason, is not a religion. It is a philosophy for life. It is a morality. It teaches us a moral philosophy and not really any theological divinity. And so if you look at it, that's true. In the original scheme of Buddhism, he does not ask his followers to follow this god or that god, worship Vishnu, worship Shiva or Brahma or anybody else. That's one thing. Second thing is, he does not get into too much into supernatural things, because he's, as I said, he's dealing with the reality of life, not with any what would happen to a person in the hereafter, and how what happens to the soul, that those. So he stayed away from supernatural things. He focused himself on the natural life itself as we live it. So once we get all these great eightfold truths, or the eightfold path in right direction, like right view, right resolve, right speech, right conduct, livelihood, right effort, right concentration, right mindfulness, then our life would be on the right path. Now let's see further how to get this nirvana. And I'm not gonna get into any theological problems what this nirvana is, but as I said, this is a very peaceful life. How to attain nirvana? Then you take refuge or shelter in three jewels, as he taught us. In Buddhism, these three jewels stand for Saddha, or belief in Buddha. Some people believe even that was not required, as long as you follow Dharma, the teachings of Buddha. And especially for the priest, you live in the sanghas or living sanghas, the brotherhood of the monks and the nuns, and you obey the laws of the sanghas of your brotherhood. That so these three items: Saddha, belief in Buddha; following and practicing Dharma, the duty or the teachings of Buddha; and living in peace in the community of the brotherhood of the monks and nuns, that would get you to nirvana. Also, the Buddhist precepts or laws for the lay people, for common people, that's very important with Buddhism, as well as the code of monastic conduct, the rules and regulation for the monks and nuns. So here you see two types of people: one, common people; the other, the priestly people or the monks and the nuns in Buddhism, each one to follow their own rules and regulation for their life, and that would get you to nirvana. Let's see further. Another major feature of Buddhism is in the attainment of nirvana is this Panca Sila, 5 virtues. And let's see those 5 virtues. And most religion, they teach us 5 voluntary promises to always abstain from, think about it, killing, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery. Remember the 10 commandments? So here, these are 5 voluntary promises that we make, that a person would stay away from, abstain from killing, stealing, adultery, lying, and intoxication, alcoholic. Stay away from, these bad things, and you would be fine. You would get your nirvana. And, as I said, it's a moral philosophy, and it teaches us all these good things, to do in life, and stay away from these bad things like killing, stealing, adultery, and I think any religion would teach you or preach you the same things, whether that came, after Buddha or went before Buddha. So that's the reason Buddhism very, dealing with the human reality right here, right now. Let's see further. The holy books of Buddhism. Tripitaka, the three baskets, as they're called, the three baskets of knowledge. Tripitaka, three major holy books. Sutra Pitaka, that is Buddha's teaching and discourses, what he taught. So these Sutra Pitaka, they contain Buddha's direct, his teachings and discussions. Vinaya Pitaka, this set of holy books, they contain disciplines, rules for the Sangha or the communities of monks and nuns, how they should live, by the Buddhist rules. Those are contained in Vinaya Pitaka. Abhidharma, this is a higher teaching or Buddhist philosophy. Whoever might be interested, whether the lay people or the common people or the priestly people, their Abhidharma, it contains Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist doctrines, disciplines, and it's a sort of a common book for those people who want to go into the mysticism or the philosophy of Buddhism. So Sutra Pitaka, one more time, the teachings of Buddha. Vinaya Pitaka, again, teachings of Buddha, but much more concentrated and focused on monks and nuns and how they should live their life. Abhidharma, a higher philosophy. The philosophy of Buddhism is contained in Abhidharma, and whoever is interested in, they should go and read them. Then there are the Jatakas. Jatakas are, these are in fact stories from Buddha's life, about 550 stories from Buddha's life, and Buddha taught by examples, and so they contain all those great examples or similitudes that he taught about. These also contain moral tales, words of wisdoms that we get from Buddha. They also contain Buddhist philosophy, Jatakas. However, Jatakas have created controversies and have led people into sectarianism. Some people believing, that no, they did not really exist. Later on, people added them, and some people believe that no, they did exist. So here, especially in terms of the Jatakas, or because of the Jatakas, the people, Buddhists, they became divided over the nature of the Jatakas, the life stories of Buddha, either over the nature or the veracity or the truthfulness, or sort of, some people doubted it, if they really were what they were, people were taught that these were. So they created problems, and that's how divisions and rifts happened in different councils that the Buddhist leaders, they convened and they talked about them. Some people would take and some people would not take them. Let's see some of these Buddhist councils. Buddhist council, these were four major councils. Okay, first council, it was convened by a king of Magadha by the name Ajatasattu. If you remember from the previous lecture, I mentioned him, I talked about him. This was a king who had killed his own father to get his throne, but he turned to Buddhism. He became a good person, so he convened this first council. And there he wanted, and the Buddhist scholars wanted to know what was the real teaching of Buddha. So they recorded these sutras or the teachings of Buddha, so that was a good thing. They also codified the rules and the regulation for the monks and nuns that are called Vinaya. So this was a very productive, first council in which most of these things were recognized, but this would not be the first or the last time. This council emphasized on the doctrinal purity, that we must keep the teachings pure and as pure as Buddha taught them. But nothing remains, pure, and they do get into problems. The second council that was held in 383 BC, this emphasized the conservative nature of the monastic rules. So now we are getting like a sort of, not truly Brahmanism, but this would be much more the rule of the monks and the nuns in Buddhism and would make it much more conservative. They also insisted, the Second Council insisted on the originality of Buddhism, to which they believed was only a moral philosophy, non-divine. Buddhism, they believed, did not have a god. So it was a non-divine moral philosophy that dealt with human beings, and we should keep it that way. The Second Council reiterated the Theravada, or the teachings of the elders of the First Council, that whatever the First Council teachers told us, those elders, that is really Buddhism. So they wanted to emphasize that one. The Third Council was about 250 BC, the Third Council, and a major council, okay, because it was convened by the Mauryan king Ashoka. This was the king who had killed a lot of people in one battle of Kalinga, and then he turned to Buddhism and became very peaceful person, and he emphasized, in fact, preached Buddhism. He reinforced also, this council, the Third Council, reinforced the Theravada teaching of the First and the Second Council, in which the emphasis was on the non-divinity of Buddha. They also spread in the Third Council, after that 250. After Ashoka, you see the spread of Buddhism to Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia, and that's where we find Buddhism today, thanks to the efforts of these people. The Fourth Council, close to about 100 AD, during the king of another great king, Kanishka, the Kushan king. In 100 AD, he convened this council, and there, Buddhism got into some major fundamental changes. The reason for this time, 100 AD, that is like 500 years after Buddha. These changes were like as I said, no religion stays the same way forever. But now what was happening with Buddhism, it was getting from northeast of India into northwestern part of India. Now the northwestern part of India is a different place from the northeast. Why? Because northwestern India already had a lot of religions, a lot of gods, a lot of deities, and by this time 100 AD, that is 100 years after Christ, even the latest religion by that time, Christianity, had reached, or its influence had reached this area. So what you see in northwestern part of India, a lot of Greeks with their own gods and their own way of thinking. You see high Brahmanism. You also have a lot of Persian people in this area. Zoroastrianism, which was the Persian religion, that was very strong there. Mithraism was very strong. Also, this was the time of the Bactrian, or the collapse of the Bactrian people who had come from Bactria. So they had brought the Chinese thoughts, so Greek, Chinese, Persian, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, all these religions that were there influenced Buddhism. And those influences, of course, showed themselves in creating a new sectarian group among the Buddhist people that we would see right now. So keep in mind the influences of other religions in northwestern India upon Buddhism. So what you see is the major change was that a new religion, a new sectarian group came into being, which is called Mahayana, a greater vehicle. This greater vehicle, the vehicle is a reference to that if you follow this brand of Buddhism, they would, vehicle is like a boat or a ship that would take you from one shore to the other shore of safety. So that's how it's called greater vehicle or boat or ship, Mahayana. These people believed that yes, Buddhism was a moral philosophy for a few people, but now Buddhism was a religion for all the people. Now think about it, this morality or philosophy was becoming a major religion under Mahayana sectarian group. Buddha himself was deified. That is, he was turned into a god. And again, this area was, known for this among the Greeks and the Persians. If there was a great person, even among some Mediterranean and Middle Eastern people, if there was a human being, but that human being had achieved something great, that human being had done something what the rest of the human beings could not do. So that human being was taught and considered as a god, as a divine, just like Alexander the Great. So many people believed he was so great that he could not be a human being. He could be only a god. Julius Caesar, among the Romans, who were, very rationalistic people, but he was so great among them that they believed that he must have been God to be so great. So was Caesar, so was Alexander, and so, a lot of Persian rulers, and now Buddha himself was considered to be that type of a God. So deification of Buddha, let's see further. And so from here onward, now you would see Buddha being worshipped, and his images would be made and religious rituals would be made around him. So now think of Buddha not as a person but as a god under the Mahayana Buddhism. Also, the belief was that there wasn't just one Buddha but many other Buddhas, and especially Amida Buddha or Amitabha, which you see so much, in China, Korea, and Japan. And so this Amida was the most important Buddha after Buddha himself. So existence of many Buddhas now, just like existence of many gods. Another major change was the concept of Bodhisattvas. Now these Bodhisattvas, these were not Buddhas. They had almost achieved their nirvana, their awakening, but they delayed their going to heaven. And this nirvana was now believed to be a real heaven, a real place. And so what they did, they delayed their nirvana or their going to heaven so that they could help other people achieve going to heaven. So that's a major change. Bodhisattva, a person who would help other Buddhists to get nirvana. Let's see further. These two major sectarian groups, Theravada, it went much more into southern, it is called Southern Buddhism, and it went in the south like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos. That is Southeast Asia. So that's why it's called Southern Buddhism, and also known as Hinayana or Lesser Buddhism. Mahayana is the greater vehicle, and it went into north, that is Northern Buddhism, and it's called, Mahayana or Greater Buddhism, Northern in China, Japan, and Korea. Let's see what we have in conclusion. We talked about, how Buddha from Prince, he became a Buddha. We talked about Jainism, the teachings of Buddhism, the holy books of Buddhism. We focused on, the four Buddhist councils and two major Buddhist sects. I think we did a lot today, and thank you very much for tuning in today. Next time we'll talk about Islam. Aloha.